Okay, let's dive in. We've got some really interesting sources today.
Yeah, quite a mix.
And they all seem to circle around this one core idea from that main piece, why rich people keep learning, and you should too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, about stacking cash. It's more about the how, the mindset, the actual mechanics.
The constant learning curve, really.
Exactly. So we're going to unpack that main article, but also pull in stuff from like a movie analysis.
Right, margin call.
Yeah, and income streams, real estate basics, even a surprising bit about diamonds.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And that personal story, too, the crypto options thing.
Right. So the mission here really is to sift through all this
Mhm.
and pull out the key stuff for you, the listener. We want to make these financial ideas clear, practical, without getting lost in the weeds.
Totally. Think of it as hitting the highlights, getting the actionable insights from what these sources are saying about building maybe a more secure financial path.
Perfect. So we'll touch on those key traits the main source talks about, the power of just like tracking your money.
Sounds simple, but
Yeah.
crucial.
Then comparing income types, side hustles versus passive income. We'll get into real estate a bit, that margin call cautionary tale,
Definitely need to cover that.
the diamond factoid. And then, yeah, that really specific story about the crypto trading shift.
Just kind of a tour through different angles on financial thinking, all drawn from the material we have here.
Okay, so let's start with that main piece. Why rich people keep learning. What's the big takeaway there, beyond just, stock tips or whatever?
Well, what really jumps out is that it's not just about the technical know-how. The source really drills down on mastering things like time management.
Time management for getting rich. How does a...
Yeah, it sounds broad, right?
Yeah.
But the source connects it directly. It's about consciously making time for the important financial stuff.
Like planning.
Exactly. Planning, learning about new options, reviewing how things are going. It's about directing your focus, your time.
Yeah.
Which you can't get back towards actively building wealth, not just letting things drift.
Okay. Making time intentionally.
Got it.
Got it. And the thing you mentioned, calculated risks. That sounds like, risk.
But the emphasis is heavily on calculated. The source is clear. This isn't about wild bets.
Right.
It's presented more as having the understanding to weigh the potential upside against the potential downside.
You're doing your homework, basically.
So you know what you're getting into.
Precisely. You make a move where the possible reward seems worth the possible loss based on what you've learned.
Yeah.
And that's where the keep learning part loops back in. You need the knowledge to even assess the risk properly.
Knowledge takes the gamble element out, or at least reduces it. Okay, so beyond the mindset stuff, the sources get practical too, like that monthly finance review idea.
Oh, absolutely. That piece describes budgeting and doing a regular monthly review as like a financial power tool.
A power tool, I like that. Yeah, it's positioned as fundamental. The source argues it gives you that essential visibility, seeing exactly what's coming in, what's going out.
So you're not just guessing.
Right, and that lets you make changes quickly, see if you're hitting your goals, and maybe just as important, feel like you're actually steering the ship, financially speaking, not just reacting all the time.
Like a dashboard for your money life. Makes sense. And I guess that info helps with the next step, like figuring out how to earn more. The sources talk about different income streams.
They do. There's a comparison between, active side hustles, where you're directly trading time for money.
Like driving for Uber or freelance writing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Versus trying to build income streams that ideally need less of your direct time moment to moment, often called passive income.
Right.
The source doesn't really say one's better than the other, more like prompts you to think about what mix works for your situation and goals.
And real estate often gets lumped into that passive income category.
It does. There's a sort of real estate 101 angle in the material, looking at ways to get started. It talks about owning property directly, sure, but also things like REITs.
REITs, remind me.
Real estate investment trusts. Think of them like mutual funds, but for property.
Okay.
You buy shares in companies that own big stuff, shopping centers, apartments, office buildings, and get a piece of the income they generate, but without having to be the landlord yourself. The source suggests it can be a less intimidating way in.
Less hassle, maybe. There was also something about building an income-producing portfolio framed as like, don't retire poor.
Yeah, that piece shifts the focus a bit. Instead of just hoping your assets go up in value capital appreciation, it talks about intentionally building a portfolio that throws off regular cash.
Like dividends or interest?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dividends from stocks, interest from bonds, maybe rent from real estate. The idea is to curate a mix of assets specifically designed to provide a steady income stream, crucial for financial independence, the source argues.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's pivot a little to the warnings. We have that analysis of margin call.
Right. This is where the sources provide a pretty stark cautionary tale. It uses the movie, which is set over like 24 hours inside an investment bank.
Right before the 2008 crash hits.
Exactly. And the analysis uses it to show how things like systemic risk, just pure greed, and maybe ignoring or not understanding what you actually own, how that can all spiral into disaster.
Watching it all fall apart, what's the big lesson the source pulls from it for us?
I think the main point from the analysis is just how fragile even these super complex financial systems can be. It really hammers home the need to understand systemic risk, to demand transparency.
Like, actually read the fine print.
Yeah, basically, understand what you're invested in, especially if it's complicated. It's a reminder that not all risks are calculated. Some are just, well, reckless. Learned the hard way by many in '08.
Typically a hard lesson. Okay, shifting gears again, but still on market dynamics. That weird fact about diamonds.
Ah, yes, the diamonds. It's used as a great example of how, sure, scarcity can create value, but sometimes marketing and perception are just as powerful, maybe even more so.
How so?
Well, the source points out that, geologically speaking, diamonds aren't nearly as rare as their price tag suggests.
Really? So it's not just supply and demand?
A lot of it is narrative, emotion, decades of brilliant marketing, frankly. The De Beers story,
Nah.
you know? So the takeaway the source suggests is you need to look beyond just the basic economics sometimes. Understand when value's real scarcity and when it's heavily shaped by branding, hype, what everyone believes. Super important for investing in anything, really. Helps you separate substance from fluff.
That's a really good point. Applies way beyond diamonds. Okay, and speaking of different dynamics and maybe less traditional paths, that Wealth Potpourri wildcard bit, the personal story.
Yeah, that was interesting. It's an anecdote from someone involved in crypto options trading. And they described feeling like just buying and holding crypto or dollar cost averaging, buying a set amount regularly.
Yeah, DCA.
Felt kind of like having a sleepy bank account, just waiting, hoping for slow growth that wasn't guaranteed.
So they wanted something more active, proactive.
Exactly. The story is about a deliberate shift. But, and this is key before jumping into trading crypto options.
Which sounds complex.
It is. It involves contracts to buy or sell crypto at certain prices by certain dates, often used to generate income from the premiums paid for those contracts. Anyway, before doing that, this person apparently invested heavily in learning about it.
Education first. Smart.
Yes, and joined a trading community. Then they implemented the strategy carefully, using proper portfolio sizing, managing the risk, treating it like a business, not a lottery ticket.
And the outcome shared in the source.
It was a pretty significant growth reported, almost 40% in 6 months, the source says, on a portfolio that grew past $5,000.
Wow, okay.
So for this individual, generating income from those options premiums felt like a much faster wealth-building hack, as the source puts it, compared to waiting for appreciation or tiny interest payments. It's just one example, of course, but it highlights a strategic shift using specific knowledge and managed risk in a newer market.
That's quite a return, and yeah, a really interesting case study from the sources. Phew. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We really have, from those core traits like time management and calculated risk in the main article,
Right.
to the practical stuff like monthly reviews, different income streams, active, passive, REITs, income portfolios.
Then the warnings from margin call, understanding perceived value with diamonds.
Yeah, and that crypto options example of a strategic pivot.
So let's try to tie this all together. What's the main message when you look back at that take this with you section from the original source? What should people really hold on to?
I think the strongest theme coming through there is that building significant wealth usually isn't about like one massive lucky break you read about.
The flashy stuff.
Yeah. It's overwhelmingly presented as the outcome of consistent, small, deliberate actions. Things like actually sticking to a budget, actively looking for and setting up passive income streams that make sense for you, continuously improving those skills we talked about.
So it's the steady grind, the smart habits, adding up over time.
Absolutely. The message seems clear. Consistency and focusing on the long haul tend to win. It's about applying what you learn bit by bit, day in, day out.
That feels much more doable, actually, less intimidating. Which brings us to the end here. The source leaves us with a final thought from that Wealth Potpourri wildcard section. Kind of a challenge, really.
It does. It poses a really interesting question for you, the listener, to think about. Have you considered how just one small but calculated change in your own financial approach might make a real difference down the road?
Yeah, what might be stopping you from maybe stepping just a tiny bit outside your usual financial comfort zone to try and build wealth? Definitely something to chew on.